With the 2025 playoffs about to begin, let's dive into a breakdown on the impact each team's lineup, rotation, and bullpen has on their chances to win. There are 3 tiers teams can fall into for each category. At the top is the elite tier, which has the 4 best teams in that category. Next is the dependable tier, which mostly consists of teams who are strong in that category but not necessarily elite. Last is the questionable tier, which includes 4 teams that might have weaknesses or question marks for that category heading into the postseason. Starting with the lineup category, these rankings are mostly based on how good each team's offense was in the regular season, especially in regards to runs scored and home runs. From there, the individual hitters that make up each lineup and their perceived impact were taken into consideration. Going into the playoffs, the Los Angeles Dodgers are the top lineup in the MLB. It is no surprise that the Dodgers' offense was elite again this season. They scored the second most runs during the regular season and ranked 3rd in home runs. Much of that production starts with Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman, who all hit 20-plus home runs this season. The Dodgers easily have the deepest lineup in baseball, considering Teoscar Hernandez and Andy Pages both hit 25-plus home runs, along with Max Muncy putting up an 846 OPS and Will Smith posting a 901 OPS. Smith recently suffered a hand injury that could affect him during the playoffs, but the Dodgers will have plenty of firepower on offense to propel them to another deep playoff run. The New York Yankees offense has been as good as expected this season, leading the league in runs scored and home runs. Outside of Aaron Judge being the best hitter in baseball, Trent Grisham, Giancarlo Stanton, Ben Rice, Jazz Chisholm, and Cody Bellinger were all major contributors throughout the regular season. Teams tend to approach Judge differently in the playoffs, pitching even more cautiously than normal. If the rest of the Yankees lineup can continue to be productive though, it will result in more situations where pitchers cannot avoid Judge, and the Yankees offense will be a dominant force throughout the postseason. The Seattle Mariners ranked 2nd in home runs this season and were top 10 in runs scored. Cal Raleigh has been the biggest story in this lineup with 60 home runs, but 5 other Mariners players hit at least 20 home runs this season. Julio Rodriguez has been solid at the top of the order, with Jorge Polanco and Randy Arozarena providing good value as well. The Mariners' 2 biggest trade deadline pickups, Eugenio Suarez and Josh Naylor, have been exactly the boost this offense needed. The power that Seattle has throughout their entire lineup is rare and could be a major factor in their playoff success. Since this Mariners lineup has depth, it will not necessarily need to lean on Raleigh, but don't be surprised if he hits some important home runs to put the Mariners in a position to win games this postseason. The Toronto Blue Jays have been one of the most consistent offenses, with George Springer's resurgent 2025 campaign leading the way. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was also one of the most valuable hitters in baseball, joining Springer in the 98th percentile of batting run value. Not only do the Blue Jays have 2 of the most productive hitters this season, but also one of the deeper lineups in the league, with Alejandro Kirk, Addison Barger, and Bo Bichette. The only real area of concern, outside of if Bichette can return from injury, is that the Blue Jays rank 15th in home runs this season. To counter that though, they do lead the league in batting average and on-base percentage. Regardless of how they manufacture runs, the top 5 hitters in this lineup will be tough to face in any playoff series. Although the Milwaukee Brewers lineup had a fantastic season, scoring the 3rd most runs in baseball, they find themselves just missing out on the elite tier. The main takeaway here is that they do not have any individual hitters in their lineup that provide a major power concern for opposing pitchers. They ranked 22nd in home runs this season, and many times those big hits can be the difference in the playoffs. The main reason they have consistently scored runs this season is due to the fact that they do not have many weaknesses in their lineup. They are known to grind out at-bats and trust the next guy to get the job done. The Blue Jays get the nod over them despite having a similar offensive style because they have 4 legit power threats in their lineup compared to 2 for the Brewers. Toronto had 4 players hit 20-plus home runs while Milwaukee had just 2, Christian Yelich with 29 and Jackson Chourio with 21. That being said, this lineup is still very dependable and should be able to produce runs and win games this postseason. The Philadelphia Phillies have one of the best 1-2-3 combos with Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and Bryce Harper at the top of their lineup. The offense will most likely lean heavily on them throughout the postseason, with all 3 having productive regular seasons and significant playoff experience. The rest of the lineup is not as good as some of the other supporting cast that elite offenses in baseball have, but it certainly is serviceable. As a team, the Phillies ranked 8th in runs scored and 9th in home runs this season. This lineup should be reliable enough to win games and has the ability to show up in big moments. The Chicago Cubs were one of the best offenses in the first half of the season, but were around league average in the second half. This is not necessarily a cause for concern since they were a top 10 offense in the last month of the season, and that was without Kyle Tucker. Tucker returning to the lineup for the playoffs is big, but it might take him a bit to get going again. The rest of the lineup will have to carry its weight for the Cubs to win games. That should not be too much of an issue considering 6 different players hit 20 plus home runs during the regular season. The Cubs offense should be pretty dependable to score runs in the playoffs, but it just might not be the same amount of run production that we saw in the first half of the season. Despite the Boston Red Sox having one of the better offenses in the league throughout the regular season, ranking 7th in runs scored, they leave some question marks heading into the playoffs. The main hesitation here is that Roman Anthony, arguably their best hitter, will not play in the wildcard round against the Yankees due to an oblique injury. The Red Sox were also around league average in home runs this season, with Trevor Story and Wilyer Abreu as the only 2 players to surpass 20 home runs. This lineup is still good enough to score runs in the postseason, but the potential for inconsistency is there without Anthony in the lineup and with Abreu getting limited reps down the stretch coming off of a calf injury. In the last month of the season, the Detroit Tigers ranked 24th in runs scored. Over the course of the entire season, though, they ranked just outside the top 10, with the 11th most runs scored in the league. The biggest question is how heavily should their recent struggles be considered? Let's not forget, they ranked 10th in home runs and had a relatively productive offense excluding September. Riley Green had been slumping of late, but did hit 36 home runs this season. Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, and Gleyber Torres all had productive seasons as well. The Tigers will miss Colt Keith if he is not able to return from his injury for the playoffs, but it is not time to hit the panic button quite yet. They have enough talent in their lineup to win games in the postseason if they can shake off their major collapse from the last month of the regular season. The San Diego Padres offense has been a bit underwhelming this season. They have the star power with Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. at the top of the lineup, but they were the only 2 players to hit over 20 home runs for the Padres. The only other Padres player who accumulated 20-plus home runs this season was Ramon Laureano. He was one of their trade deadline acquisitions, but he recently suffered an injury that will keep him out past the wildcard round. Overall, the Padres offense ranked 28th in home runs and 18th in runs scored this season. It will be worth keeping an eye on whether or not the Padres can score enough runs to win in the playoffs. It is no surprise that the Cleveland Guardians lineup find themselves in the questionable group. Although they are the hottest team heading into the playoffs, it does not change the fact that they ranked 28th in runs scored and 29th in OPS this season. Jose Ramirez was the only qualified hitter in their lineup that had an above average expected WOBA. He is absolutely one of the best hitters in the league, but does not have the strongest supporting cast around him. I would not be surprised to see teams pitch very carefully to him throughout the playoffs, resulting in the rest of the Guardians lineup needing to step up and find a way to produce runs. The Cincinnati Reds round out this list with an offense that will need a lot of support from its pitching to win in the playoffs. The Reds barely squeaked into the postseason, winning 83 games, and much of that was due to the lack of power in their lineup. They play in one of the most hitter-friendly ballparks, yet ranked 21st in home runs this season. Elly De La Cruz and Spencer Steer both hit 21 home runs and were the only 2 hitters with 20-plus home runs on the Reds. For the most part, their lineup is not too daunting from a pitching perspective, but in addition to Steer and De La Cruz, Miguel Andujar, Noel V. Marte, and Austin Hayes will provide a bulk of the offensive production. Moving on to the rotation rankings, these are based mostly on the top 3 starting pitchers each team has going into the playoffs. Starting pitching depth was also taken into account, along with overall stats as a pitching staff throughout the entirety of the regular season to ultimately determine each team's spot. The Los Angeles Dodgers have the number 1 starting rotation going into the playoffs. They have some of the best top-end starting pitching and are heating up at the perfect time with a league-leading 2.07 ERA as a staff in September. They also finished 5th in starting pitching ERA for the entire season and 1st in strikeouts per 9. Their top 3 is as good as any top 3 in the league, with Yoshinobu Yamamoto at the top having the 4th best ERA in baseball. He will likely be followed by Blake Snell, who had some really positive starts in August and September after returning from his injury. Tyler Glasnow rounds out their top 3, but the Dodgers have even more depth past him. Shohei Ohtani and Emmett Sheehan have been dominant of late, and Clayton Kershaw, who put together a solid season, has a wealth of playoff experience. The Dodgers' rotation is deep, and it is likely that some of these guys will get pushed to the bullpen to support in relief roles. There could have been an argument for the Philadelphia Phillies rotation to be in the top spot if Zach Wheeler did not go down with a season-ending injury. Despite their best pitcher being injured, the Phillies' top 3 in their rotation will still be tough to face in the playoffs. As a rotation, they ranked first in strikeout rate and second in ERA. Christopher Sanchez led the way, ranking 5th in starting pitching ERA this season. Right behind him will be Ranger Suarez, who quietly put together an impressive season as well. Rounding out their top 3 will be Jesus Luzardo, who finished with the 6th best starting pitcher strikeout rate in baseball. He struggled at times throughout the regular season, but overall has been reliable and will match up well with any other team's number 3 starter. The Dodgers' depth puts them over the Phillies here, but Aaron Nola and Walker Buehler, who both have postseason experience, should be able to provide some value as well. The Cincinnati Reds have a tall task matching up against the Dodgers in the wildcard round. Their ability to compete will ultimately come down to their starting pitching. Red starters ranked top 10 in ERA and strikeout rate during the regular season. They have a strong top 3 with Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, and Nick Lodolo, plus depth from Brady Singer in the 4th spot. Green ranked 5th in strikeout rate for starting pitchers who threw at least 100 innings this season. He has an electric fastball, which is in the 99th percentile for fastball velocity, and it can shut down opposing lineups. Lodolo and Abbott do not strike out batters at the elite rate Green does, but they have both been reliable starters, posting a 3.33 ERA and 2.87 ERA respectively. The top 3 of this Reds rotation gives them a legit chance to win a playoff series. There is the slightest bit of hesitation with the Seattle Mariners rotation due to Bryan Woo's recent injury. There is a chance he will be back for the Mariners' first playoff series, but his impact is important because he has been their most consistent pitcher this season. Woo was in the 97th percentile for pitching run value and led the Mariners with a 2.94 ERA over 186 innings pitched. The rest of the rotation still provides a good amount of security whether or not Woo is healthy for the playoffs. Logan Gilbert led the league in strikeouts per 9 for pitchers with at least 100 innings pitched this season. If Woo is not available as the Game 1 starter, Gilbert is just as good of an option. Luis Castillo and George Kirby are the next 2 starters in the Mariners rotation and both have provided positive value this season. With a healthy Bryan Woo, this rotation is elite, but even with his status in question, they should still be a dependable rotation going into the postseason. The New York Yankees ranked 4th in starting pitching ERA this season without their ace Garrett Cole. Max Fried and Carlos Rodon were a major reason for this, ranking in the 94th percentile and 97th percentile for pitching run value. These 2 lefties will lead the charge going into the playoffs, but after them looms a bit of uncertainty. The 3rd spot in the rotation will be between Will Warren, Cam Schlittler, and Luis Hill. Hill missed a large portion of the season and has not found the same success so far that he had last year. Warren has provided a bulk of innings as the only other pitcher besides Fried and Rodon to reach 100+ innings this season. Since making his MLB debut in July, Cam Schlittler has had better results than Warren, but neither one of them have playoff experience. The Yankees' top 2 in their rotation is as solid as any, but they will need one of their young starters to step up if they want to make another deep postseason run. The Milwaukee Brewers had one of the best rotations in the regular season. They ranked 3rd in ERA and 4th in strikeout rate as a staff. Freddie Peralta was a major reason for that, ranking in the top 10 for both categories. The Milwaukee Brewers will be confident with him on the mound, but their number 2 starter, Brandon Woodruff, recently suffered an injury and might not be back for the playoffs. With him, they are in the elite group of starting rotations, but they drop to the dependable tier with his return unknown. The next guy up in the rotation is Quinn Priester, who has consistently gotten the job done this season since Milwaukee acquired him in April. If you are interested in learning more about Priester, check out this video I made diving into why he has been successful this year and what he can do to maximize his potential moving forward. The Brewers do not have a ton of depth past their starting 3, but flamethrower Jacob Misiorowski will certainly be used in multi-inning roles along with Chad Patrick, who made 23 starts for them this season. The Cleveland Guardians ranked 10th in ERA this season but are missing an ace at the top of their rotation with a starting group built more around depth. They had 4 starting pitchers throw 130+ innings this season and as a team ranked 2nd in total innings pitched by starters. They have 5 different pitchers they trust to start games, and each one has an ERA below 4.30. At the top of their rotation is Gavin Williams and Tanner Bybee. Williams ranked 13th in starter ERA this season with a 3.06 ERA, and Bybee led the Guardians in innings pitched. The next 3 starters are Joey Cantillo, Logan Allen, and Slade Ciccone, who have all been reliable. Again, none of these 5 pitchers are dominant, but they will keep the Guardians in games and give them a chance to win. The Detroit Tigers fall just below the Guardians here, but have one of the most dominant pitchers in all of baseball. Tarek Skubal led the American League with a 2.21 ERA and a 7.3 strikeout to walk ratio. The issue here is the depth of the Tigers' rotation. Casey Mize has put together a respectable season with a 3.87 ERA across 149 innings, but will be outmatched by some teams' number 2 starters. Jack Flaherty is the 3rd starter the Tigers will depend on, and although he has not put together his strongest season, he can still provide value in the playoffs. The Tigers' postseason hopes will most likely rely on the success of these 3 pitchers. If Skubal can continue to dominate and Mize and Flaherty provide value in their starts, it will go a long way towards helping the Tigers win playoff games. The Boston Red Sox are very similar to the Tigers relative to their starting rotations. Garrett Crochet has been one of the most dominant pitchers this season, surpassing the 250 strikeout mark across 205 innings pitched. This is the most innings he has thrown by far in his career though, so postseason fatigue could possibly come into play. Brian Bayo and Lucas Giolito fill out the next 2 spots in the rotation. On the surface, they have had solid seasons, but the concern with them is that they are significantly overperforming their underlying metrics. Giolito's expected ERA of 5 was nearly 1.6 points higher than his actual ERA of 3.41. As for Bayo, his expected ERA of 4.5 was a full point higher than his 3.34 ERA this season. Both pitchers allow a lot of contact with a strikeout rate below 20%. Not being able to put away batters on their own in the playoffs could cause some issues. The Red Sox will rely heavily on Crochet in the playoffs and hope that the rest of their rotation can hold their own. The San Diego Padres have 3 solid starters at the top of their rotation, but overall were league average in starting pitching this season. They finished ranked 16th in ERA and 23rd in FIP, which are both the 2nd worst of any playoff team. Nick Pivetta has held down the top spot in their rotation with a 2.87 ERA across 181 innings. Dylan Cease and Yu Darvish will most likely fill out the next 2 spots in the rotation. Statistically, they have not had the best seasons, but the good news for them is that their underlying metrics show that they are underperforming. Cease had a 4.55 ERA but a 3.46 expected ERA, along with the top-ranked strikeouts per 9 of qualified pitchers. Darvish also had a drastic difference in his expected ERA, which was 3.65, compared to his actual ERA of 5.38. On paper, this rotation might look like one of the weaker groups in the playoffs, but they have pitchers with the potential to make quality starts and keep them in games. The Chicago Cubs would have probably been a bit higher in the rotation rankings if Cade Horton did not suffer an injury that will keep him out for at least the wildcard round. Although Matthew Boyd was the Cubs' most valuable starter throughout the course of the season, Horton posted a 1.28 ERA across his last 10 starts and was certainly going to be an impact arm in their rotation for the playoffs. Without him, the Cubs will continue to depend on Boyd and their other lefty starter Shota Imanaga. Boyd was great in the postseason last year with the Guardians, but had only pitched 40 innings during the regular season. He won't be as fresh going into the playoffs this year, having pitched nearly 180 innings, which he has not done since 2019. As for Imanaga, he can eat up some innings but does not have overpowering stuff. One bright spot for the Cubs rotation though is Jameson Taillon and his contributions down the stretch. Since returning from injury in August, he has posted a 1.57 ERA across 6 starts and will certainly be someone the Cubs need to step up with Horton out. The Toronto Blue Jays ranked 20th in starting pitcher ERA and 24th in FIP during the regular season, which are both the worst out of all 12 playoff teams. Kevin Gausman was the lone positive for their rotation this season. He pitched 193 innings to the tune of a 3.57 ERA and struck out nearly 1 batter per inning pitched. The Blue Jays' next 4 starters consist of Chris Bassett, Jose Berrios, Max Scherzer, and Eric Lauer. Both Bassett and Berrios are on the injured list, and although they might be back to help in the ALDS, their return is uncertain. That leaves Scherzer and Lauer. Scherzer had a 5.19 ERA across 17 starts this season and could be the Game 2 starter for the Blue Jays due to his playoff experience, but his numbers this season do not instill a lot of confidence. Eric Lauer's season was a bit more productive, but the Blue Jays will most likely need some additional help from their trade deadline acquisition Shane Bieber if they want to make a deep playoff run. Lastly, for each team's bullpen, the 6 major factors considered were bullpen ERA, fielding independent pitching, or FIP, strikeout rate, shutdowns, meltdowns, and win probability. Teams use their highest leverage pitchers the most in the playoffs, so the best individual arms in each bullpen help determine these rankings as well. The top-ranked bullpen going into the playoffs is the San Diego Padres. The Padres had one of the most elite bullpens before the trade deadline and added Mason Miller, who is arguably the best impact arm in any bullpen. Miller is exactly the type of pitcher you want to shut down lineups in high-leverage situations. He led all relievers this season in strikeout rate and whiff rate. As a unit, the Padres bullpen led the league in win probability added, shutdowns, saves, and ERA. Many different factors point towards them being the best bullpen in the league, including their depth. The rest of their bullpen is filled out by Robert Suarez, who led the National League with 40 saves, Adrian Morejon, who had the highest win probability added among National League relievers, and Jeremiah Estrada, who ranked 3rd among MLB relievers in strikeouts per 9. They also have 3 left-handed relievers in Yuki Matsui, Wandy Peralta, and Kyle Hart, who could provide value. The Cleveland Guardians might be a surprise in the next spot considering their closer to start the season is no longer pitching. Even with that being the case, they ranked 3rd in bullpen ERA this season and 1st in fielding independent pitching. They also had the 2nd fewest meltdowns, the 5th most shutdowns, and the 3rd highest win probability added. Their bullpen is anchored down by Cade Smith, who ranked 2nd in shutdowns with 40 and had a 1.95 FIP, which was the 2nd best in baseball. Smith is joined by 5 other Guardians relievers who all pitched 40-plus innings this season. Hunter Gaddis was 2nd on the team in both shutdowns and win probability added. In addition, Colby Allard and Eric Sabrowski will be the Guardians' go-to lefties. The pattern for the first 2 teams was pretty clear. Have one of the best relievers in the league anchoring down your bullpen. That continues for the Boston Red Sox, who have Aroldis Chapman. Chapman led all relievers with a 1.17 ERA and a 1.73 fielding independent pitching. He also had the 3rd highest strikeout rate and the highest win probability added among relievers. Not only do the Red Sox have possibly the most dominant back-end pitcher in the league, but a decent amount of depth to go with it, which resulted in the 2nd best bullpen ERA this season. Their depth starts with Garrett Whitlock, who finished top 10 in win probability added with the 3rd best FIP among relievers. Justin Slayton, Greg Weiser, and Steven Matz will likely be the bridge guys to set up Whitlock and Chapman throughout the postseason. The Seattle Mariners round out the group of elite bullpens. They are anchored down by Andres Munoz, who led the MLB with 46 shutdowns and had the 3rd highest win probability added and the 4th best reliever ERA. As a unit, the Mariners bullpen had the 2nd most shutdowns in the league and were top 10 in both ERA and fielding independent pitching. Gabe Spear had one of the best seasons in baseball for a left-handed reliever and led Mariners relievers with a 33.7% strikeout rate. Matt Brash and Eduardo Buzardo also posted a strikeout rate above 30% this season, while Caleb Ferguson's hard hit percentage of 27.7% was the best in the MLB. The Milwaukee Brewers bullpen ranked in the top 6 for both ERA and fielding independent pitching this season. They also just got Trevor McGill back from the injured list, who is one of their best relievers. Before going down with an injury, McGill compiled 27 shutdowns and 30 saves. Joining him in the back end of Milwaukee's bullpen is Abner Uribe, who had the 3rd best reliever ERA in baseball and led Brewers relievers in innings pitched and shutdowns. Jared Koenig, Aaron Ashby, and Tobias Myers fill out some strong depth in Milwaukee's bullpen. The Chicago Cubs have one of the deeper bullpens in the playoffs. Brad Keller, Caleb Thielbar, Daniel Palencia, and Drew Pomeranz all threw 40-plus innings with an ERA under 3. Overall, the Cubs ranked 11th in bullpen ERA and had the 4th fewest meltdowns. In the playoffs, they will be comfortable using Thielbar, Pomeranz, and Taylor Rogers as their left-handed options. From the right side, Palencia, Keller, and Andrew Kittredge will be who they rely on most. The Cubs do not have a big-name closer like many of the teams above them, but they should have the depth to finish out games. The Toronto Blue Jays have had questions surrounding their closer situation, with Jeff Hoffman having a negative win probability added and 13 meltdowns. That being said, the depth of their bullpen is still relatively strong, with contributions from Brendan Little, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Braden Fisher, Yariel Rodriguez, and Mason Fluharty. As a unit, they were league average in ERA and fielding independent pitching, but had the 4th best strikeout rate and win probability added. The bullpen is not elite, but should be relatively dependable throughout the course of a playoff series, with Little and Dominguez likely to be used in the highest leverage situations. The Philadelphia Phillies acquired one of the best closers in the league at the trade deadline in Johan Duran. He was 10th among relievers in FIP and 7th in shutdowns during the regular season. Overall, Phillies relievers ranked 20th in ERA and 17th in fielding independent pitching, but had the 7th fewest meltdowns in the league. Despite some areas of concern, Matt Strahm and Tanner Banks led the team in shutdowns and win probability added and will be the Phillies' go-to lefties in the postseason. Orion Kirkring and David Robertson should be able to provide some depth as well from the right side. The Detroit Tigers bullpen leads off the questionable group as the playoff team with the fewest shutdowns in the regular season. Their relievers do have the 3rd fewest meltdowns among playoff teams, but ranked 17th in ERA and 24th in fielding independent pitching. They have a couple of shutdown options in Kyle Finnegan and Will Vest, but their lack of high leverage depth could cost them in a playoff series, especially with the limited depth in their rotation outside of Tarek Skubal. The New York Yankees had the worst bullpen ERA of the 12 playoff teams during the regular season and were around league average in fielding independent pitching. They did have the 6th best strikeout rate though, which inspires some confidence. They have 2 of the best relievers from the last few years in their bullpen, with Devin Williams and David Bednar. Although they had the 3rd most meltdowns among playoff teams this season, their bullpen is usually a major strength for them in the playoffs. Luke Weaver, Fernando Cruz, and Camilo Doval should be able to provide depth as well despite their late season struggles. The Los Angeles Dodgers bullpen issues have been widely recognized, especially with Tanner Scott and Blake Trinan's recent struggles. They finished the season ranked 21st in bullpen ERA and 17th in fielding independent pitching. The biggest issue was that they had the 2nd most meltdowns in the entire league with 100. On a brighter note, they did have the 4th most shutdowns, and their bullpen issue should shrink with how deep their rotation is. Starters who could provide bullpen support include Emmett Sheehan and Shohei Ohtani. Jack Dreyer, Justin Robleski, and Anthony Banda are key pieces in the bullpen who the Dodgers will still rely on. The Cincinnati Reds had the 2nd most meltdowns of any playoff team and the worst fielding independent pitching of all 12 playoff teams. Emilio Pagan and Graham Ashcraft are the 2 best arms in their bullpen, but by no means are they shutdown relievers. Their next 2 dependable relievers are Nick Martinez and Tony Santillan, but they both had a below average expected WOBA this season. Chase Burns is a player they might try to use in a long relief role to get a bulk of outs, but overall their bullpen depth is shaky. Hopefully you enjoyed this in-depth breakdown of each team's lineup, rotation, and bullpen heading into the 2025 playoffs. If you did, check out this video popping up on the screen and subscribe for more content in the future. Also feel free to leave a comment about which teams you think have the best chance of winning in this year's playoffs.